Hey everyone, this is Davidson, and I just wanted to introduce you guys to Marina Kirik. We met through Ivy, and I think she has an amazing story. I wanted to share with you guys sort of some of the things that we've spoken about in the past, self-development, and kind of learn more about your journey.
Sure. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Marina Kirik. I'm a health coach and yoga teacher living here in New York. Davidson and I met just about a year and a half ago when I moved here first from Chicago. So that's kind of where my self-development journey was just beginning. I actually moved to New York from Chicago to get more out of my comfort zone, meet more people, network more. I started getting ideas for what I could do as a part-time business or hopefully eventually as a full-time business. So decoupling myself from a full-time job. And that's where I started on the path of health coaching and learning about yoga. And Davidson and I met in one of the networking circles that we're both in, Ivy. It's kind of social networking, volunteer events, different speakers and workshops. So yeah, lots of like-minded people here in the city for sure. So it was a great move.
Yeah, I guess like what prompted you to, you said outside your comfort zone. I guess what about New York City made you kind of choose New York, I guess, as opposed to all the other cities?
Yeah, I always had a goal to move to New York, and I would always say, at some point in my life. And for me, my personal development journey started really with podcasts. I think about 3 or 4 years ago, I started listening to, it started with School of Greatness, and it expanded to a number of other podcasts. I think at one point I was listening to about 20 or so pretty consistently. And what many of the top podcasters for personal development out there talk about is really kind of seizing the moment, not putting things off, setting concrete goals, going out and actually executing against those goals. And I think it was after listening to a really good podcast, most likely a School of Greatness podcast about goal setting at the start of the year in 2016, where I woke up that day, listened to the podcast, and realized that the time is now. I'm never going to be younger. I'm never going to have more energy, more freedom to, be as mobile as I am right now. So yeah, I woke up that day, listened to the podcast, went in and talked to my manager at the time about moving. And then 3 months later, I was here. And the reason why I chose New York over other cities is it's really kind of portrayed as this place of really exponential growth and networking, people from all over the world coming together, and everyone is very, very driven and actually achieving what they set out to do. I was thinking of it as a place where people move to achieve a certain goal, whatever that might be. For a lot of people, it's a business, meeting someone, expanding their network of friends. There's always kind of a goal and a purpose behind moving here to New York specifically. And for me, it was the same, and it was probably a combination of many things. So definitely meeting and networking with more people, getting out of my comfort zone of having a lot of friends and my family around in Chicago, and kind of, going outside of that comfort zone and that bubble, and definitely starting my own business.
Great. Yes. Why don't you share with us a little bit more? It seems like you've been doing a lot of self-development. I guess tell us a little bit more about some of the training that you've had, and more about your vision.
Yeah. So this past year was the 2019. It's 2018. It's 2019 now. Throughout 2018, I did about 4 different personal development events. And that was really with the purpose of kind of accelerate that learning and see what I can do by stacking different events one after the other. So
crazy year, huh?
Yeah, it was. It started in October and then through the end of the year. So I really kind of did one after the other here towards the end of the year. So it definitely depends on people's preferences. what would work best for me. I knew I had to kind of do it one after the other to get the most like powerful transformational coaching and development. Because for me, if I do one event and then time passes, I kind of lose momentum. It's really easy to gain inspiration, but in terms of executing on that inspiration and going out and actually doing things that you're inspired to do, I feel like for me, some of that kind of, fades with time. So that's where I did one after the other after the other. And I started with Summit of Greatness. So Lewis Howe has his own motivational 3-day speaking event in Columbus. So that was a lot of connecting with like-minded people, other coaches, other entrepreneurs, a lot of great speakers from his show. So a lot of motivational speakers, other people in health and wellness, doctors, PhDs. It was just a really great variety of speakers. So started off my personal development with a healthy dose of inspiration. After that, I did Landmark Forum pretty shortly after that, which was a very different flavor of development. It was very introspective, thinking through your past and working really on yourself. It's a lot less of, kind of rah-rah motivational setting, but more kind of sitting back, taking in the learning and really having your own personal breakthroughs. So yeah, very different flavor. And once I got that learning and kind of understood where I am currently, what my past has been and how it's influenced me, I did Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins, which was another very drastic flavor. So we're kind of going from mild to medium to extra spicy with Tony Robbins.
Extra spicy, love it.
Very, very spicy. That event was, for me, the most transformational, I think. It was a 4-day, extremely high energy, very energy focused, very focused on connecting and making relationships. The one thing that Tony focuses on is elevating your energy and getting into what he calls a beautiful state. So whereas something like Landmark was really sitting back and taking in knowledge and kind of being very introspective, Unleash the Power Within was really 25% jumping, dancing, hugging other people, strangers who, become friends. So that was really, really powerful to kind of as a culmination to this buildup that I had of personal learning. And another great thing about Unleash the Power Within is the fire walk. So once I had all of this learning, the fire walk is really the piece that's truly transformational. So for those that are not familiar with how it works, it's truly you walk on hot coals. It does not take very long. It's maybe 7 to 10 steps, so it takes seconds, but you really build it up to be such a feat in your mind. And, it really just shows you that you can overcome any kind of fear. Even throughout that day, we kind of have many ups and downs where it's like, I'm probably not going to do it. No, I will. No, I won't. And you build up your energy. There's a huge supportive network of 10,000 other people who are going through the same thing. Some people did choose not to do it, but for me, I felt like if I did not do it, I would lose like 50% of the value of the entire event. Once I walked across the hot coals, that's kind of where something clicked, where, all your life you're taught not to do something, not to go out and, quit your job or do something scary, travel. Obviously, we learn as kids that something that's hot should be stayed away from. And, once you realize that there's always a supportive network and you can do anything as long as you're in the right state of mind, that you can overcome it and do it. And once I walked across those coals, that's when something clicked. I went home. I started my LLC. I put together my 12-week coaching program. So everything that I had kind of been thinking about and ruminating on and, putting together for a really long time as ideas, but not really like things that I was executing on, that changed for me. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for sharing. So tell us a little bit more about, it's called the Sum of All Positive.
Yes, yeah. So it's the Sum of All Positive. That's my LLC. It's also sumofallpositive.com and Sum of All Positive on Instagram. The way it started is probably 7 or so years ago. So it's been quite a while, which is why I felt like I really needed something that's going to be transformational for me and taking all these ideas to the next level. For as long as I could remember, when we're asked about what it is that we want to do, when we grow up, even throughout high school, my vision has always been to help people. And that's very nebulous, right? It's not like I'm saying I want to be a doctor or I want to be a firefighter or something that's really concrete. So I didn't really have something tangible to attach it to. I just knew that overall, what I wanted to do in my life is to help and impact as many other people's lives as possible. So over time, throughout grad school, I started learning more and more about nutrition. I started doing more and more yoga. And from everyone that I interacted with in that space, I started picking up bits and pieces about why that's so important. What we eat, what we surround ourselves with, our mindset, how well we sleep, whether or not we exercise, all of these things contribute to overall a healthy or an unhealthy lifestyle and state of mind. And I thought, maybe this is something that I could really do long term. Throughout this time, I was on, a business path. I was working for a technology company. So none of that was kind of directly in line with health and wellness. So I started supplementing my full-time job with kind of continued learning. So I got certified in integrative nutrition, got certified as a yoga teacher. So it's also really nice because whatever it is that people think they could create as like a second job or a second career, there's many opportunities out there for continuous learning. So I think many people will kind of get on one career track and think about all of the education that they've had to date as a sunk cost or kind of an anchor keeping them in place. But there really are so many opportunities, especially now with online learning, with different communities that you can find on social media. There's so many opportunities to pick up new knowledge and really valuable knowledge, right? Because these are certifications that, well, yoga was, of course, in person, but my health coach training was online, but it's one of the largest health coach communities in the world. There's probably like 200,000 graduates now, and it was all online, so I did that in my free time while working, of course. So yeah, it was nice to see that there's a wide range of different learning that I could pick up. And then with different personal development events, of course, those are also, in my mind, continued learning.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of what brought me here. Now I'm a certified health coach and yoga teacher, so I've been teaching private lessons, and I have a 12-week coaching program while still working full time. But I'm excited to see where this new journey takes me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing with us all that. Well, could you elaborate a little bit more about your 12-week coaching program?
Yeah, sure. So throughout this journey, I connected with a lot of people who are specialized in many, very specific fields. So there's physical trainers, there are fitness professionals, there's nutritionists, there's just yoga teachers who focus on that one area, or focus on one type of yoga. And I thought, well, first of all, by nature, I was kind of interested in it all. So, I was thinking about what things could fit together to kind of round out one picture of wellness and what I think about wellness. And for me, I think that you can learn what to eat and eat all the right things, but I don't think that that will necessarily change your entire world. You can start exercising, but maybe then you're not eating right. If you focus too much on any one of these areas, you might be foregoing, a focus in another. If you're working out a lot but not recovering enough, maybe you're not sleeping well.
Yeah.
So many of these things work together to create that holistic picture of wellness, or prevent it, right? If you're hyper focused on something, you might be making compromises in other areas of your life, such as friendship, career, relationships. So I like to think about all of these areas as one holistic picture of, a person's health and wellness. So and when I tell people this, I think it's natural to also think about, well, wouldn't something like that, focusing on 12 different things, be overwhelming to someone? And it certainly can be. So what I also wanted to do is to make this program manageable and sustainable with minor shifts in many different areas to not overwhelm someone with, huge shifts in any one specific area. Because I think ultimately we give up when we are asking too much of ourselves, when we're asking ourselves to give up alcohol entirely, or when we're asking ourselves to work out every single day. I don't think any of that is truly sustainable. So I wanted to make something that's really sustainable in the long term. So my 12-week program, I start with breath and water. I think those are the two most essential pieces of nourishment in your everyday life. You can live for weeks without food. You can only live for days without water and for minutes without oxygen. So it really made sense to start with the most elementary and build up from there. Then I look at nutrition, so macro and micronutrients. We talk about sleep, exercise, mindfulness, and personal products. So what you're putting on your body and what you're bringing into your home in terms of things that are healthy or could be toxic, and trying to eliminate that as much as possible. And that to me really creates a entire picture of what you're putting on your body, what you're putting in your body, and what you're surrounding yourself with. And in each one of those areas, I want to leave the person going through the program with, as I mentioned, sustainable shifts. So something like talking about what it means to drink more water, why you should drink more water. Once you understand why it's important and what the right amount is for you, I think it becomes a lot easier to incorporate that into every day. I hope to get the person to a place where they don't even have to think about whether or not they had 7 or 8 glasses of water. That part is irrelevant. I think once you learn why it's important and make it a habit, it becomes a lot easier and it becomes less stressful, as opposed to something that you're keeping track of, and worrying about. It's the same with other areas, right? What's on your plate, how often you're exercising. I think making it more sustainable and stress-free is the way to go.
Okay. Yeah, I think holistically, I think it's always good to look at the big picture. Oh, so I was going to ask you, so I think I'm good in probably most of the areas you talked about, except for sleep. What would you suggest as someone like me who, like, I feel like I've been trying so hard, but like I just can't get that to like where I want it to be?
So is it that you think you're not sleeping enough? Do you not feel well rested?
I mean, I feel fine, but I guess like, how like the experts like Ariana Huffington says you have to sleep a certain amount, like because of people like her, I'm like, I guess I need to sleep more, but I mean, I feel fine. Like, I don't know.
Well, there are a wide range of variations in how much someone should sleep. So there is actually a gene that only about 1 to 1.5% of the overall population has that allows you to sleep like 4 to 5 hours a night, and that's all you need. That's a very, very small amount of the population. Everyone else is still recommended somewhere between 7 to 8 hours, depending on your lifestyle. I do, yeah. I get right around 7.5.
Because I know you're up to a lot, so I mean that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, that's where now that I know how important sleep is for me and how much I need it to function, it's just not something that I can compromise on. So, I think oftentimes people look at sleep as a place where they could shave time off and cut corners in favor of productivity.
Right.
When in reality, the more you sleep and the more high quality sleep you get, and the optimal sleep time for you, the more productive and more optimally functioning you are the next day. Right. So I really think about it as an investment as opposed to a sunk cost, right? Or like dead time throughout the day. Yeah. It's really so important. And yeah, I would actually say the one thing that could help in knowing exactly the right amount of time for you is to try to sleep without an alarm as much as possible. So I would set an alarm for the absolute ceiling that you have to wake up at. So let's say you have a meeting at 9 a.m. That's your first meeting of the day, and it's going to take you about an hour to get ready and get to work and be ready. Sure. I would set that alarm for 8 a.m. as opposed to, trying to do 7, 6, and trying to get more productive time at the start of the day. And once you do that for a long enough period of time, your body will adjust, right? Because you're catching up on the right amount of sleep. So, if you do that for 5 days, maybe on the 6th day, you actually will wake up earlier because you've gotten consistent, sufficient sleep for enough time. So it's kind of the same as anything where, if you deprive your body for long enough, you're going to need to sleep for 10 hours. Yeah, that's true. But if you're well rested, maybe your natural sleep window is 6 hours a day and kind of getting closer to that time. True. Does that be like one dramatic change? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, I think just being gentle on yourself and figuring out how much time it is that you need to sleep. I think it's really important for everyone to know what their right amount of time is. If that's 7 hours, 7.5, 8, could be 5, could be 9, and that's okay, right? It depends on every person. So.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. So I think one of the challenges, like you said, is like it's hard to get all 12 to like perfect, right? So I guess like how would you suggest, or is it more of just like moving a little bit in each area so that eventually you get to like where you want? Is that more of like the philosophy? Or
yeah, exactly. And that's why it's not all 12 things that we cover at once. I do build on it. So starting with the basics, right? So the breath. We learn about the breath and why it's important and how to breathe optimally, how to use breath for stress management, how to feel more energized by using the breath. So, you build on it. And then once we've kind of micro-mastered that one area, we can move on to water and kind of build on it.
But do you think by like the 12th week, you're kind of like the first couple weeks, you're kind of like, you know what I mean? Like it's hard. I feel like it would be hard to remember or be at full capacity of like the first couple of weeks because I feel like we normally resort back to like our average, prior to, you know what I mean? So
yeah, and once again, I think it comes back to being gentle on yourself and everything that's in the program and really all of the different things that you would learn to be healthy. None of them are drastic or should be drastic. I mean, if you're hiring a coach and they're telling you to only eat 20 grams of carbs a day and that's your focus, you're going to get tired, you're going to stress yourself out, you're going to forget all the other things that are going on because you're going to be so hyper-focused on minimizing your carb intake. Whereas, what about your sleep? What about maybe it's a different season and you actually need more carbs. In the winter, maybe you need more fresh vegetables. In the autumn and fall, you need heartier food because it's cold out, we're rushing around. It so much of that depends on, your personal lifestyle, your career, your stress level, where you live, your climate, everything.
So what do you suggest? Because I feel like in the Northeast, like we get no sunlight, right? Because we're always usually indoors. So what do you suggest for people who, I feel like most of us have some sort of seasonal, depression,
seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah.
So I actually wrote a book a blog post about this very recently. It's linked through my Instagram in my bio, but that's a great question. I think this is super important, especially for people who live in the Northeast and the Midwest, colder climates, even, abroad, places like Iceland or Norway that only get, 4 or 5 hours of sunlight a day for half a year. Yes, we are very deficient in vitamin D, and vitamin D is super important. The best place to get vitamin D is from sunlight, so from 15 to 20 minutes a day of direct exposure to your skin. I know we're taught now to wear sunblock 100% of the time, and that's absolutely not something that you should be doing because you're literally depriving yourself of something that's so necessary. Now, if you're going on a beach vacation, of course you need sunblock with you, but I only put on sunblock after I've been exposed, for at least 10, 15 minutes. It also depends on your skin tone, how quickly you take in vitamin D from the sun, but especially in the winter, as much as you can, walk on the sunny side of the street when it is sunny out. Otherwise, for us in New York, Chicago, other places like this, vitamin D supplements are, I think, really critical. And that's something that pretty much any doctor will also agree with. I think it's very rare to get consensus between the health and the medical and all of these different communities. But I think finding a high quality vitamin D supplement is super important, especially for us here. And, maybe in the summer, you won't need that because you're going to be getting that necessary amount of exposure to sunlight throughout every day. So it's not as big of a concern, but I think definitely autumn and winter in the colder climates, it's really important.
Okay.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, and then, so is it mostly online or do you do one-on-one coaching as well? How does all that work?
Yeah, so it's mostly online because it's easier to, find time with people, especially now everyone is so busy. So being in person is sadly becoming more and more of a luxury. So this is nice. But absolutely, I think one-on-one in person is also great whenever possible for those who are local in New York. And same with yoga. I think doing one-on-one yoga with the person and being present with them is so powerful too, because it's such a personal practice. And that's what I love the most really is introducing yoga to someone who has never done it before and really showing them, different poses, different possibilities in your own body that you might not think were ever possible, and kind of how to gradually work towards a goal that you might have, more flexibility, more strength, things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so you done a lot of the yoga. I guess how does the yoga training has helped you in your coaching practice, right? Is that one of the 12 weeks that is incorporated? Or?
Yeah, so that's definitely a big part of incorporating movement into your everyday. I think there's a lot of opportunities to incorporate movement, stretching, and doing yoga, even just at your desk at work. I think that's something that's lacking so much with our, sedentary lifestyle that so many people have adopted. And I think now it's becoming more and more prominent that sitting is the new smoking. So even though you're going to work out for 30 minutes or an hour a day, if you're sitting for the other 10 hours, you're really not getting that much benefit. It's still beneficial, and you should still absolutely, exercise and get your heart rate up for a consistent, practice throughout the week. But it's that incorporation of movement throughout the day that's so rare but so necessary. So that's been definitely very life-changing, and thinking about the ways that you can move more often, and stopping yourself when you've been sedentary for too long. Taking meetings on the go. If you can walk around the office and take a meeting that way, you're not having to take notes or type anything up. That's something that I highly recommend too. But then also to the point about yoga training overall, I think it's just good for life. I would actually recommend most people, especially if they've been practicing yoga for a while, to get certified just as a way.
Even myself, you would recommend?
Absolutely, as a way to deepen your practice. And you learn so much about mindfulness, being a good person, the way you treat others, the way you treat yourself. You learn a lot about the body and anatomy and movement and exercise for sure, but there's a big component on mindfulness and just really being a good person. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're getting close to around 30-something minutes. Any last minute? Oh, I think this would be a good question to ask you. So, one of our favorite podcasts at the Lewis House, the School of Greatness. So what are your 3 truths? Like if you were to, on your last day and, there's nothing left that I guess is recorded, like books-wise, podcast-wise, like videos-wise, like what would be 3 truths that you would like to communicate to the world?
That's a great question. Wow.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, I love it. So the first thing that comes to mind, and this is something that I've learned this past year with my certifications and with yoga, is to be gentle first and foremost on yourself. I think especially in New York, there's so many people who are, more alpha in the way that they just go out and show up in the world. So it's being more gentle about what you're asking of yourself, first and foremost, not being judgmental of yourself. It's been a journey for me because I think I am someone who's type A. I love punctuality. I love being involved in many different things. I love meeting many different people. And before, I used to get really kind of down about myself if I wasn't meeting certain goals that I set out to do or aspired to do. That's not to say that, setting and meeting goals is not important, but when you're, kind of running around doing too much and expecting yourself to do all of that and take on all of these things, you might get into an unhealthy place. Physically and emotionally. So first of all, be gentle on yourself. Second of all, be gentle on others. I think, many coaches, and it's been popular to start saying that you have to help yourself first. You can't pour from an empty glass. So first of all, being gentle on yourself, but then doing the same for others, right? Because we do unto others as we would prefer to be done unto us. So, whatever it is that you're asking of yourself, and noticing, maybe other people are not exactly meeting your expectations, but you're not perfect either. And, you have to be gentle with yourself about the fact that you're not perfect and gentle with others about the fact that they're not perfect. But then, I think the third is still knowing what it is that's important for you and working towards that, because I think it also goes back to being gentle, and knowing what the most important things for you are. I think it's kind of all related. If you know what your key things that you want to achieve this year, key things that you want to achieve, overall in your life, it's going to be easier for you to weed out the rest. And then it's going to be easier for you to be gentle on yourself and on others, when you're really, working towards your true north, as opposed to just trying to keep busy and, trying to do a million things, not doing any one thing well. I think it's setting, really important goals, not just busy goals, and then working on those.
Cool. Thanks, Marina. Appreciate you sharing with us. And how can people find you? How can people follow you or contact you? What's the easiest way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I think Instagram right now is where I spend the most time. I've been growing a lot of content there in terms of yoga and health coaching. So that's Sum, SUM of All Positive on Instagram. And from there, I post links to my blog posts, which I post on Medium. And on my website, people can reach out if they want to learn more about my 12-week program, if they'd like to network, learn more from each other. I love meeting with other like-minded people who might be in the same wellness and yoga space.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.